morning. All right, I'm so glad to have this opportunity. Thanks to Cap, Naushir, Meher. We've gone a long way in terms of a relationship, so I'm glad to have joined you here. Today I'm talking about fundraising and basically about fearless fundraising, because very often fundraising is seen as fearful. Can I have a show of hands? How many of you is a trustee or a board member of an NGO here? All right, thank you, good to know. And those of you who are in a leadership role at the management level, okay, a pretty good bunch. So both sides, you know, the people responsible for the executive role as well as the governance role, you both are here, which is brilliant because those are the people I work with for the past 29 years that I've been in this sector. And today, fearless fundraising, I wanted to start with fundraising itself. When we talk about fundraising, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Yes, so it's about like money, resources, where do we get it from? What else? Yeah, it's not going to be a lecture. Mine is really a workshop also, you know, while I lecture. So what else comes to mind when I say fundraising? Advocacy, and what would you advocate? All right, and that is the first point I want to make, and something I learned when I started off 29 years back, trying to raise funds back in Singapore as a Nayi Naveli Dulhan who had just moved to Singapore, you know, with my husband. And I thought like, yeah, kitty party was one option, or do something a little more productive was the other option. And I chose to volunteer with a local charity to raise, I mean, I just chose to volunteer, but they gave me the job of fundraising. And I had no clue what to do or how to do it. But one thing I learned in the process was, or rather I'll tell you two things that I learned. First thing I learned is fundraising was not about money. Because very often we think of fundraising, "Arey jaake paise," you know, we have to get those resources. And the moment we get that narrative into our head, that fundraising is about money, we've lost the plot. The reason being, fundraising has never been about money. It's about the work we do. It's the need that exists in our community, the gap between government funding, local resources, whatever. And you're trying to fill that gap. You're the catalyst, the fundraiser, whether you're a trustee or a staff, the person going out there is the catalyst to fill the gap between the need that exists and the current resources that's available. And hence, fundraising becomes a very noble thing. And then that brought me to the second and very important point was, very often when we talk about fundraising, what do we need to do? Yes, and that's the big mistake that we make, just like the money mistake that we make. Fundraising is not about asking. If fundraising is not about asking, what is it about? It's about demonstrating what you do. Yes, very effectively. And what else? If fundraising is not about asking, what is fundraising to you? Enrolling, yeah, you know, motivating someone. So the second principle of fundraising is not about asking, it's about giving. And that's something I learned that turned fundraising on its head for me. You as the catalyst is the person giving others an opportunity to do something with their lives, their resources, their time. And then fundraising is no more about, you know, I'm so shy, fundraising makes me shy. Shy is because we think it's about asking. But the moment you turn that narrative, that it's about giving, whichever holy book you take, dene wala hamesha lene wale se mahan hota hai. So you suddenly become totally mahan. You know, to be able to go around giving people an opportunity to make a difference with the resources that they have to meet the need, the gap that you're trying to meet. And hence, that's the first point I want to make today. That when we think of fundraising, let's think of it for what it genuinely is. It is about giving people an opportunity to make a difference. And we as the catalyst, we as the informed sector, knowing what the gaps are, we are there to be the conduit through which they can make that impact and do it collaboratively and well. Does that make sense? Thank you. So that kind of was the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second point I wanted to make was the ABCD of a philanthropic journey. Because very often we try to make a one-size-fits-all for all our donors. And I tend to do an acronym simply because it helps me remember, and I hope it helps my clients and my participants also remember, and hence the ABCD. Donors come in different format, and we can think about it ourselves. We fall in one of these categories too. A, altruistic. They generally give because कुछ अच्छा करना है. Might as well. You know, अभी आए हैं तो कुछ अच्छा करेंगे. अच्छे कर रहे तो हम भी करेंगे. You know, that kind of attitude, altruistic. And that kind of donor really needs to know. Sometimes he doesn't even need to know impact क्या है, कर क्या रहे. It's usually a relational thing. I know you, you know me, I will support you. Or I've seen your work, I will support you. It's altruistic. They're not expecting a report. I hope and pray we are giving a good gratitude and thank you, but they're not expecting much in return, other than the fact that they have in some way helped someone or some people. B, business focused. Now what happens is this altruistic man or woman sends his son and daughter to MBA or wherever for education. They come back and say, Daddy, Mummy, you know, all this is good, altruism and is good. But you know, kuch business bhi, you know, kuch fayde bhi hone chahiye, some business benefit. And hence you come to that B donor who will say, okay, I will sponsor your thing, to logo lagega. या I will do this, तो T-shirt पे हमारा नाम लगेगा और आपके इस पे हमारा पिक्चर लगेगा या depending on the size of the check हमारा फोटो आपके entrance पे लगेगा. That's the business focus. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just part of the journey that a donor takes. So if you go to a donor with a business focus, a B category, and you talk as if you're talking to an A guy, you get the script wrong again. And he says, sorry, budget nahi hai. That's because he does not see the business value in your collaboration. And for him, usually it is publicity, him or her, it's publicity, visibility, those kind of stuff. After they have been at it for a while, they move on to the C. So what happens? The wife of the donor or the company chairman's wife goes down, visits the project, and genuinely loves what they see there. Or the daughter or son goes, or they themselves, the donor himself or herself gets invited, finds out, and that's when they move on to the C, community involved. It's no longer about logo kahan lagega. It's about how can this community genuinely be helped with the resources I have available. So they start wanting to be, you know, kind of co-creators. You know, what is the need? Let's do it together. Let's figure out a solution together. I'll bring my resources and my connection. You bring your understanding of the community and the need. And together, let's see, you can call it community involved or co-created donor. A donor who believes in co-creation. And D is the daring entrepreneur. Many of them say, अरे हम जब business start किया था किसी ने हमें नहीं दिया था कुछ. We had to figure it out ourselves. You know, we figured out how to run our business. तो हम क्यों ये NGO वालों को पैसे दें? You know, they have to. I would rather invest in them so that they can become sustainable. I don't want them coming back for more money every time. So I'm going to think of a business model whereby there is the circulation of the money that I have given them. And that's where the D, the daring entrepreneur, comes in. He takes or she takes an entrepreneurial view to their philanthropic direction. And rather than give donations, they would rather set up maybe a social enterprise or help not just within the NGO, but start a separate social enterprise. Many of the current ultra-rich who have made good in the IT industry or in the tech industry or the communications industry, they come from that kind of mindset. There is a solution that technology can offer. Can we think of that rather than just give you to do the way you did it in the 1950s and 60s and 70s? Let's look at it in the 21st century way, and I will invest in your solution. So A, B, C, D. And I found that once we are able to know our donor and kind of, and I don't mean label them or put them in boxes, because some do go back and forth, but at least then we know how to communicate with them. We know their motivation, and we know how to match some of the stuff that we do with that motivation. So when people say, hey Usha, you've been very successful in fundraising, I would say this was a bit of a secret sauce, because I never speak to a donor just from my point of view. I in fact only speak to a donor from his or her point of view, because that's the only way we can get the positive answer. And that doesn't mean we sell our souls to it, because there is always something that is common. And we just focus on that area, and high likely you will bump up your so-called, if you were to use a marketing commercial term, your conversion rate. Because you get over time really good at being able to empathize with the donor and figuring out how that can be translated into resources for the need that you're trying to meet. Does that make sense? Okay, so now let me go to the third point I wanted to make, and that's how do you work with the high net worth individuals? Very often at this point in time, how many of you are dependent on grants, either foundation or aid agency grants? Abhi aid agency in India, you know, is kind of the thing of the past, but in general, yeah, we are used to being, when I'm asked by some of my clients in India also, Usha, we need a good fundraiser. I said, okay, you know, let me know what's the profile. And the profile comes, it's basically a grant writer. It's hardly a fundraiser. You know, a good project person can be a good grant writer. But a fundraiser who needs to go meet corporates, who needs to go meet individuals, who needs to figure out a creative way of mobilizing the community to raise resources, a good grant writer is not what you need. You need somebody who actually understands the psychology of interactions of a relationship. So when I look at that, I have to kind of literally rewrite it for my clients to say, this is not the profile of the person you need. You may have needed that person in the 90s, maybe even in the early 2000s, but surely not now. You need a different profile of person. And that kind of brings me to, how many of you raise funds? You know, if you look at fundraising as a pyramid, you have many donors at the base of the pyramid. You know, small donors, 2,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees, maybe 10,000 rupees. You know, plenty of them. Then you go further up. How many of you would say you have donors in the top in terms of quantum? So one hand, two hand, few hands, yes. May I know, ma'am, the lady in blue, what is, just give me a profile of one of your donors who you come kind of in the peak of the pyramid. Yeah, I think you can just speak into it.
So basically we operate 3 schools, and some of our donors support the entire operation of the school.
And give me a ballpark. How much, what is a big amount to you for your organization? Just a ballpark.
If I talk about one school, it will be like 50L. 50L. 50
Okay, 50 lakhs. So a donor individually who is able to give 50 lakhs.
Yes.
And you do have a couple of donors at that level. How many of you can say you have a couple of donors at that level? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, ma'am, what about you? What's the profile of your donor who gives 50L and more?
Yeah, so one of the donors is the founder of the institute.
All right.
We have a regular funder.
Okay, so the founder, of course, is other than the founder.
Yes, we have others under the CSR program.
Okay, so it's through the CSR, so it's corporate money, it's not individual wealth. Now what I'm asking for is individual wealth. Someone who can spend 30 crores on the wedding of this daughter in Switzerland or Singapore, but at least can give 30 lakhs to you locally. No, that is my point. We have been stuck in that way of, you know, again the grant writing mentality. Na? So hence we always think there are individuals. Any of you who are part of the Dasra Giving Circle, where entity actually, which organization are you from? All right, and give me a quick update of how the Giving Circle helps Impact India.
So we have been focusing on maternal and child health, and we have been thinking this is a kind of firefighting for improving the public health of community-based public health approaches. And then we have been thinking about adolescent health, and Dasra, they also focus on adolescent. So they founded us, and then we pitched our subject, and it was 2 meetings, and they have, you can say, finalized approximate 3 CR funding for adolescent girl health and nutrition model.
And it's coming from individuals who are pooling the money.
Correct.
Correct.
10 individuals.
10 individuals. And that's what I mean. It's happening. It's just that we either were not aware or we didn't think it is possible. In India especially, I mean, NGOs, I will talk about it later, international NGOs coming to India, this is where the market is. And we Indian NGOs are like, oh, don't know, we are still doing our 20,000 and very happy, ki koi donor mil gaya 20,000 dene ke liye. Which doesn't, that not to belittle the 20,000 donor, but the point is there's somebody sitting out there who is willing and able to give 20 lakhs. It's just that we've not given him an opportunity to make a difference to the cause we want to. Ma'am, I saw your hand go up. A quick one. What's the profile of your donor?
Our donor is a foreign organization. In fact, I got initiated into the organization where I work through that. He wanted to give a grant to an Indian NGO. He was an advisor to the government of Spain in Basque, and they said they would like to fund something in the developing countries for women's causes.
All right. So is it an individual and a person, or it's coming from a...
No, it came from an organization, but this person was instrumental.
All right.
And he came there, and we got 1 crore 63 lakhs.
Brilliant. Yes. And I'm just highlighting it to show that it's being done. If we just need to create enough of a currency of this idea that it can be done. And we don't need, at this point in time, 1.5 at the first go. It may start with 20 lakhs, 50 lakhs, but that's 50 lakhs, a lot more than you doing a walkathon and a jogathon and a food fair, which takes a lot of your resources, but the net result in terms of actual funds for the cause becomes a lot less. And the other thing about this kind of fundraising methodology is you don't have huge impact reports to do, unlike a institutional donor. You had a thought there?
So for us also, it's always been foundation. I mistook it as, it has
All
never
right.
been individuals doing.
Yeah, but is the foundation individuals vehicle for his wealth?
Sort of.
Yeah. So that could be possible. So the check may come from a company or a foundation, because that's just the individual's money management methodology, using an entity as the conduit. But is the decision made by that one family or that one person or the husband and wife together or the son and father together? That is what I call the high net worth individual fundraising. So the conduit doesn't matter. But the motivations and how you work with them does matter. Make sense? Okay, the next point I wanted to make was the Asian insight. I have been very fortunate to work across Asia and the Pacific. I've got clients right from Australia and Fiji through to India and Kazakhstan. So, it really pans, and all of Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and so on and so forth. So I have really been very, very blessed to be able to work with a whole range of donors. And I wanted to share with you a few insights that I've learned. One is the work of the international NGOs in so-called the re-emerging countries. I don't even call India or any of these, China, where I work very intensively, emerging countries. That's the media, Western media's way of putting us down. We have been on top of the world for the longest time. So if at all we want to use the word, I tend to use re-emerging, because our time has come again. So when I talk about re-emerging countries, I find our local NGOs over time, and I was telling this to Noshir this morning, ended up being subcontractors of funding agencies. Very often the money comes and we just have to make sure the money is spent properly. Or when you ask the leader of an entity, would you like to do this? Array, no budget. We don't have a budget. Our funding is finishing. Rather than, this is important to be done, and we're going to figure out the resources to make that happen, if it's important to us. If it's not important to us, don't do it. That's not effective. But if it is important, we will figure out a way to mobilize the resources. Not the other way around, कि अरे funding is going to stop or funding is going to reduce, तो हम ये नहीं कर पाएंगे. That immediately shows the mindset that something is amiss as far as fundraising, the mentality of that entity goes. Because they are only able to do what the funder is able to give, rather than they believe in a mission and they've figured out everything that needs to be done and they have prioritized which piece of that strategy will be resourced for first. And when I work with many of these organizations, I find that many of the Indian NGOs, Thai NGOs, Indonesian NGOs, name it, the local ones, always are trapped in this mindset, deficit mindset. Oh, there's not enough resources to fund the things that we would like to fund. But the INGOs came in. And many of them, thankfully, they came in because many of them are clients of mine. So, my business is doing fine. But the point is, when I work with them, I'll give you an example of leprosy in India. We were talking about leprosy. How many of you work on leprosy issue here? I can promise you 0. Because that's not an issue. In terms of the scale and scope of it, very small. And it's something that people even don't want to be associated with. Ki bacche sambhal rahe, bude sambhal rahe, and all sounds so much better than leprosy, kind of thing. But we were able to raise funds. And we didn't even use the leprosy patients, right? We talked about a doctor who could have been fixing noses and eyelids of some Chinese coming to India to get it done, or even among the Indians getting the bald head filled with hair or whatever, cosmetic surgery. But he chose to be a doctor working with leprosy patients to the retractive fingers to ensure that surgery is made such that the leprosy patient can regain the use of his limbs. And we started telling the story to Indian donors to say, this is a doctor who could have charged extra, so much more and become a rich doctor, but he chose to work with leprosy patient. Will you help him on this journey to ensure that we can get as many cases worked on and we can get more doctors to join the system? And it's capability building. It was for the salaries of doctors, not even ki wo leprosy patient will get it. And people were like, yeah, I get it. We need to pay the doctor, nahi to kaise aayenge doctors? And the donors were telling us, कि doctors kaise aayenge, paise nahi diye to commercial to uska acha dhanda chalega. So I might as well. And they were giving for salaries of doctors so that the leprosy patient can have a better opportunity. So, and that I found from the INGOs, because I worked with these INGOs, they took time and effort to start telling that story, And when they told the story, the Indians responded. The Indian community, and I'm not even talking of the big top 20 families, top 50 families. I'm talking of a regular bank manager who says, हाँ कैसे चलेगा? हम देंगे ना महीने का, I'll pay at least 50% of the doctor's salary or महीने का 10% of the doctor, and 5-6 people get together and kind of sponsor a doctor. So that's the kind of fundraising, our community-based fundraising that we need to think of. Forget the, the INGOs are coming, television ads karne padenge and all these very expensive options. Of course, if you have it, if you're a UNICEF and all that, go ahead, do it. But if you're not, we need to tell the story. And storytelling, facts only tell, stories sell. And if I had gone there and said, we want to do 50, operations of retractive fingers, we want to do it in 5 different locations, I wouldn't have got the funds. But we talked about a doctor who will help those retractive fingers to open up. And suddenly people could visualize the impact. Unko koi report ki zarurat nahi hai. They can visualize the impact. And they're willing to sponsor so-called operating expenses. Sure. Yes. So that is one thing I wanted to highlight. The other one, yes.
So you're saying just start with the story and then
That's right. Always start with a story. Again, that's the little secret sauce again. Because the moment you get into the facts and figures, and I know there are plenty of lawyers and accountants in this room, the moment you start with the facts and figures, that narrative goes that way. But if you go for the real reason, and story is the reason we were set up in the first place, because we wanted to change lives, because we want to impact communities. So start with the story. And then, of course, come to the point as to how this story translates into a way that donor can collaborate with us. And that makes a big difference. Does that make sense? And the last point I want to make before we go into questions and answers, right, is governance, since we are at a compliance. And one of the works that I do across Asia, and especially in Singapore. Singapore is one of the, if you know, Transparency International and all, some of the most cleanest of governments and countries in the world. Despite that, we have compliance and governance issues. So we can imagine how many times over work needs done here. I'll give you a quick acronym of the role of the board and the leadership team when it comes to governance. And again, it's an acronym, I order. I stands for integrity. The trust that people have so that you can mobilize resources. You need policies, you need to be compliant in order to gain that trust. O, oversight. We need to have, as leaders in the organization, the oversight to ensure that where we are, where we want to be, and how we are getting there are meeting both the legal but also the moral obligations of our organization. And sometimes the moral obligation is maybe we are helping women empowerment, but there is a fancy party that can be thrown in a 5-star hotel for a fashion show. Now, women's empowerment and a bikini fashion show, I'm not sure. You may make a lot of money, but does that make moral sense, is the question. You can get, and again, it doesn't mean you cannot or you should. Question is, have you evaluated, should you or should you know? So R, resources. Don't worry about budget hai ki nahi. Worry about ye karna chahiye ki nahi. Is it a priority in order to meet your mission? If it is a priority in order to meet your mission, go get the resources. Resources are out there. It's just a matter of telling the story right. So that's R. D, direction. In order to know direction, you need to know where you came from and where you want to be. You need at least 2 points on the graph to know aise ja rahe ki aise ja rahe ki aise ja rahe. So we need to know, evaluating how you got to this point. In the area of compliance, in the area of moral responsibility, in the area of impact, the area of transformation in the community, in the area of human resources, whatever. How did we get here and where do we want to go? That's direction. I-O-R-D. E, the effectiveness of the decisions we have made. Very often, I always say, sometimes we do evaluation for reporting, not for learning. No? And we know we do that because dena hi hai, report to dena hi hai, and I have to, as Noshi said, I have to check those boxes. So the report, if we use that report for our strategic plan, we are actually lying to ourselves and we know it. So it is really about ensuring that we are doing it effectively, genuinely effectively, making our strategies based on real effectiveness rather than assumed effectiveness. And, as a consultant, what I do is, help them through matrices and all that to figure out which quadrant it belongs to and whether we should keep it or leave it. Sometimes it's like, nahi, but our founder's wife started it, we need to keep it. And that already is a question of effectiveness, It may have had a very big impact at that point in time. Now has it run out of its date, is the question. And hence effectiveness. I-O-R-D-E and the last one R, risk. What are some of the risks we put our entity and the people who stand with this entity and our stakeholders if we do not meet some of those? And not just legal compliance again. It could be reputational risk. It could be a moral obligation. So what kind of values and culture that you as the leaders of the organization are creating among your volunteers, among your staff, among your stakeholders, be they donors or be they beneficiaries. So those are the key responsibilities I see when it comes to ensuring governance and good compliance. And that kind of ends my speech, so to say, but we are open for questions. Yes?
There are mics on all the tables, so, or if you don't, I will give you Madhura's there with the mic. Questions?
Any tips on how to find HNIs? Tell me, where do you work?
The medical area?
Yeah, no, the physical, geographical location.
Andheri East.
Andheri East. Do you have an indication of Andheri East, which are the more affluent areas versus at least the addresses?
Broadly, yes.
You broadly would know.
Yeah.
Do you already have donors?
We have, but not from this area.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's one of the ways I will start working on. If I know, I would do an open house one day for certain, I mean, you know, that's strategic fundraising. It's not, we
Yeah,
have to be
yeah.
egalitarian, sabko bulana chahiye. Yes, but some are made little more equal than the others when it comes to fundraising.
Yes.
So I would say I would really do a small event, which is not in a hotel, but in my house, to, you know, even if it means putting flyers in their letterbox to say, we're having an open house just 2 blocks away, please come with your family and find out. Nobody will come, but 3 people will come. And that's all you need. And you sit with them and say, thank you so much for coming. This is what we aspire for our beneficiaries in this medical area. And we are so glad you came. What were your motivations for coming? क्योंकि हमने तो 50 लोगों को बुलाए थे, लेकिन आप 3 आए, लेकिन आप क्यों आए? Not so much कि हम क्या कर रहे. Why did they come? Why of all the junk they had in their letterbox, they chose to come? And of course you don't even need to stuff the letterbox, you know, your board, your people will know somebody who knows somebody who can be invited. Those 3 and 5 people who come is all you need. And then that's the beginning of the circle, so to say. To say, we aspire to do this by that time, and it's going to cost us this. But before even we tell you how much it's going to cost, we want to show you what we plan. And usually they will ask, you know, "Arey, itne saal kyun nahi kiya? Or your government scheme nahi tha kya?" You know, and then you know they're going on a journey with you. To say, then you tell them why not. And out of the 3, one will, chances are, hopefully all 3, but one will put his hand up and say, you know, I have an idea. If this is what you need, I can think of this way of doing it. So that's the cheap and easy way to do it. Start with your assets. And your neighborhood, your community is your asset. Work with that first before you stand in the street and try to convince strangers. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Just 1 second for the mic.
Try the other one. I think that one works better.
You have a list of existing donors but who are latent. So how do you approach these guys?
Okay,
again?
how do we reactivate dormant donors? First of all, the question, and goes back to the effectiveness, why did they become dormant? Is it because we stopped talking to them? So, give me your cause. What is your cause?
We work with orphanages and
Okay.
help them in terms of nutrition, education and...
Okay, so do you have children
Yes.
that go for exams? From the,
Yes.
you know, from the orphans that go to exams? Okay, abhi season hai exam ka. Write to them. Don't ask them for money. Tell them, thank you so much for being our supporter. We've missed you the past 4 years, 5 years. I will kick you that you missed them for 5 years and did not contact them. But anyway, I will let you be for now. But I would say that we missed you for the past few years. So i.e. acknowledging that we know that they have been supported. We just wanted to let you know 20 of our children will be sitting for their whatever exam, 3rd standard ka exam, 5th standard ka exam, SSC ka exam ho to even better, you know, kind of. And because every person knows what this March period is about, right? Exam period is about. We just want you to keep these children in your thoughts because we hope we can get 72% results, or we hope we can get 100% results, whatever the results you're hoping. And the person reads, it's not about money, it's about updating someone who has forgotten you, and suddenly either the reminder helps him, or just the fact that you have included him in your journey helps them. And what you need to do is a call for action. You need to know of these lapsed donors that you communicated with who will come back to you. So give them a call for action. We would like you to WhatsApp one-liner at this number, which we will share with our children to encourage them for the exams. Whatever, if you're a praying person, send them a prayer. If you're a practical person, give them a practical tip. Just one-liner. That's all we need. Of course, you say you have 100 lapsed donor, 5 or 7 will have responded. That's the 5 or 7 you need on your list to start your journey. Again, cheap and good way, but very relational, not sending him or her another thing to say, if you have been lapsed for the past 5 years, we would like you to make a donation of. That's not relationship. You know, if he's not been your boyfriend for 5 years, you can't expect him. We've not met for 5 years, but let's talk marriage now. That's what we do with our donors. Yes, sir.
We are an NGO which has just completed 50 years.
50.
Years.
Brilliant.
But we've run out of steam.
Oh, you have run out of steam. Yeah, that happens at 50. I kind of feel it too.
My wife and I are too busy running the NGO rather than fundraising.
Gee.
What should we do?
All right. You really need to expand your list of supporters. Do you have someone who believes in your cause?
Our managing committee members do.
Within the managing committee, is there 1 or 2 who you would say is more of a champion for that? Not even one. You need to, at least, I wouldn't say throw the current managing committee, but at least you need to induct 1 or 2. Can you think of 1 or 2 person? It could be even a donor, or it could be one of the other stakeholders who you think cares for your charity enough. Can you think of at least few names? Have coffee with that person. All of them, 3, 4, 5, individually, you and your wife, have coffee with them and tell them that we are running out of steam. We want to pass over the baton. And this is the impact we've had so far. We've done it on our accord. We cannot. And is your cause, do you honestly believe it's something that should live past your time? Or it's actually, ठीक था हम करते थे, ठीक था उसके बाद, actually there's no need.
We work with deaf children.
Okay, so obviously there is a big need. So they have you to be sustained so that you can do what you're doing, right? So tell them the story of why it has to live beyond your ability to sustain it. And out of the 5 or 6 that you will talk to, have a clear call for action. What I'm looking for is a rejuvenation committee. Call it whatever you want, rejuvenation committee. Jo bhi, the next phase committee, the 21st century committee, jo bhi kahna hai. You call it something. And I want you all not to do anything initially, to come and together, let's see what we can do for the next 5 to 10 years and how we are going to get there. And once we know how we are going to get there, that's co-creation. Once we know how we are going to get there, let's figure out what it will take to get us there. It may be certain collaboration, it may be certain financial support. And once you know that, and if they created that vision for you for the next, beyond your and your wife's time, they've bought into the plan and they will figure out for you how to do it. And I can tell you with strong conviction that it works because I've done it over and over again across different cultures. It works. I hope that, yes, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you need to speak into the.
You mentioned that, resources will follow.
Yes.
Find the, the narrative on what you want to do, and resources will follow. We're an NGO. We work with children, impact children up to the age of the 3rd standard. We always wanted to go beyond 3rd standard, 4th, 5th, but resources has always been a constraint. So I'm not really getting it on how you.
How did you get to the 3rd standard?
It's been there for a while. It's been a journey till the 3rd standard, but yeah.
I'd like to explain that. We actually got to the 3rd standard in an odd way. We work with BMC schools, they don't have preschool. So we started the Balwadis.
Yes.
And we run 7 at present. We had a corporate organization which came in and worked with us under the CSR at one of the Balwadis.
Yes.
I think they were very drawn to it. And they discovered that we were going from, this was an experiment to which actually one of the BMC education officers allowed us.
Yes.
Where we took an hour more with the kids during their school day as they went into class 1. And then that same lot, it was like a hand-holding, working with the same subjects in a sense.
Sure.
And the familiarity of that baby school teacher.
So how did you get
we went
here?
from, sorry?
So how did you get to primary 3?
So the babies went to class 1, then they went to class 2.
No, where did you get the resources to get?
Initially, we managed with our small funders to do that one.
Yes.
When this particular organization saw the work we were doing, they said, we don't want to work with your Balwadi, we want to work with that. They were so taken with it, and they eventually wanted to fund us across 11 schools. So it grew in its own way organically.
All right.
Because
So what you need to do, go back to the E, the effectiveness, It has been organic,
Right.
but there are some things that maybe the tail wagged the dog in some cases, and we just have to be honest about it. And where are your core competencies? Is Balwadi your core competency or growing it to SSC? If you do have, maybe that's what, or you want to build, you want to collaborate. I would say that is what you need to do. And firstly, even before you go looking for funders. And once you're sure that for the next 10 years, this is where we want to take the story out, talk to everybody, including the corporate that supported you. Even if the people may have changed, or actually the person now at the senior level, tell him, remind him or her of the story of how it started and how now systematically you're planning to get to phase B or phase C or of your journey, and how he or she is an important part of that journey. And without his or her input, you won't be able to make it. And he or she will, I can promise you that, say, I can't do it, or he may say, I can do it.
I'd like to add something.
Yes.
In our first year, we were highly successful. Then there was a huge fund crunch in the corporate, and we were reduced to 25% of funding.
Yes.
So we went through a bit of a trauma. We maintained our relationship with them. They're back.
Brilliant.
They want to grow us.
Brilliant. See? So, and that's the whole idea of relational fundraising. It's not about just an ATM kind of relationship where transactional, where you're just going when you need some money. But you are working with them, you give them a practically donation holiday. Tax holidays we have heard of. You've given them a donation holiday because of the crunch, and now they're back, and you're back with a story that is stronger and more systematic. Then will you please help us? Does that make sense?
Yes,
yes. Of course, in order to get there, you have to put in some time to do that evaluation and that. But that's 2-3 days worth of work, frankly. But once you have that, the rest becomes a lot easier. And that's how resources, when I say resources happen, that's because you have a solid case and a solid call for action. Because that's the other thing we don't do. Even if we tell the story right, we don't have a clear call for action. Uske baad kya karna hai? So the person listens to the story, is very highly motivated, and then you say, thank you so much, and you leave. So it's about that SMS, please send a little message of encouragement to our students who are sitting for the SSC. That's the call for action, because there you are finding out of the 50, who are the 5 who will have that in their heart to do that. And that 5 is the one that you will. So you need to have some call for action. And a call for action does not mean asking for money. It's about getting them engaged, getting them entrenched in your vision of the world you want to see, the community you want to see, the child you want to see in 5 years, 10 years time to come. I hope this was of some help. I'm still around, so if you have questions, do ask. Thank you.